Welcome to The Game of Life with Andrew Mwangusha, where real stories meet real moments. On this show, we go beyond the headlines and speak to athletes, leaders, and artists as they navigate the ups and downs of their unique journeys. And today, we have a very special guest in the house, a good friend of mine, and this man wears so many hats. Former National Cricket Cranes captain. He's also captained different clubs and won several national championships. He was at the World Cup at least for 2 underage World Cups. Now that's huge. And of course, currently still playing with the Wanderers. And he is an advocating, practicing lawyer and still deep in the heartbeat of sport. Please help me welcome the one and only Mr. Davis Arinitwe Karashani.
Yes, pleasure to be here, Andrew, and I like to just keep it very simple. Davis is just all right. There's no need for any superlatives or any other titles. I'm extremely fine with just Davis, but it's a pleasure to be here, and the place looks amazing.
Thank you so much, Davis.
You're welcome.
Wasivota.
Nasivajishaniwe.
I think we shall do more research on that.
No problem. It's a good start.
Welcome to the Game of Life.
Thanks a lot.
And
Thanks
this
a
is
lot.
where we actually do play the Game of Life.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. And of course, honoring the invite. This is special to us and the team. And you being the man who has tested everything in terms of purpose, chasing for honors, but also, taking in that pressure to deliver for the country.
Yeah.
That's quite huge. So welcome to the Game of Life. And I think we shall dive straight into it.
Thanks yet again for inviting me, but I said earlier that for me, your invitation is one that is very easy for me to obviously look to actually attend. So for me, it's a pleasure that you even consider to have me on this show, and I hope I can do justice to your invitation.
I trust you. Davis, now, we need to go back. For those who might not know you, you've captained the national team, that's Cricket Cranes.
Yeah.
But also led the country to 2 World Cups. That's the Under-19 World Cups in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. You are also a lawyer now, and you're a mentor, and you're still playing the game.
Yes.
So this gentleman here, who is quite outspoken, take us back to the kitchen where he was cooked. And by that I mean this being that we have here amidst us.
Yeah.
Where did this all start?
Well, simply put, really, Andrew, your question is very broad, and it takes me way too back to where I literally started from, where the footprint of what I could actually luckily do in sport started from. But simply put, I always want to tell as many people that I can, those at least that are willing to listen. I think I was extremely lucky. One, not only to take up the sports that I did, but also to have that privilege and the honor to represent my country at actually the highest level of international sport. So it's something that I do not take for granted. Well, your question largely asks about the kitchen itself. I can tell you that, it's common culture in our settings as Africans is that a lot of us children were taken care of communities or families that are beyond just our biological mothers and fathers. So my story is not very different from many others. So it's that kind of story. I was born in Mbarara. Fortunately for me, I grew up with both my parents, my dad and mom, whom I thank very, very much, Mr. and Mrs. Karashani. Unfortunately, my dad is deceased. That's a story for another day. My dad passed on while I was at the Under-19 World Cup, so it's a bit of a bittersweet moment. But yes, as I said, I grew up again with siblings, quite a number of siblings. I grew up in an extended family whereby all the children in the home, it was never about how much blood you carried of the parents. It was basically, as I stated earlier, it's more like a community. I was also very lucky to go to some decent schools. I do not take that for granted. I went to Lohan Academy for primary school. That's where I had started my PLE, but however, I also started from Kitante. I was also then very lucky and privileged to go to Ontare School for O-level. From that, I crossed to Busoga College, more in the east, and then I went to Makerere University. So for me, it's been a very, very long journey. And when you mentioned the fact that I played in 219 World Cups in 2004 and 2006, that kind of very easily gives away my age, but not that I have an issue with it. But for me, looking back, when I lie down on my bed, I'm extremely thankful and grateful to the gift that God actually did give me.
Wow. And the household, what was, you? Of course, you said you were many kids. In terms of when you're many kids and with the boys, when you come to numbers and food, how did you handle that?
Well, Andrew, taking a close look at my size, really, you can tell that I was never the world's biggest eater. I grew up in a family of at least one in the house were not less than 6 to 8 children at each one time. So, one, I always like to thank my parents for having that kind of heart to accommodate as many people as possible. But also thank God that I was able to extend the gift of provision to my parents, and we grew up. I would like to say that we grew up reasonably comfortably. I can't say that we struggled too much. That's something I also thank God for. But I also want to acknowledge that we were not too badly off in terms of how we grew up. But in terms of the food itself, we were lucky yet again that there was always something, at least for someone to have a bite. So my story, I would say, is not one
rags
of,
to riches.
I don't think it is exactly that. It's one that I thank God for. But I was lucky again, as I've rightly stated, that that there was something on the table each time we needed to come and eat. I grew up in a household of about 6 or 7 children, as I had stated. About 3 or 4 of us were boys, the rest were girls. I have a bigger sister. She's actually as well an advocate of the High Court. She was basically the leader of the pack, the children. Up to now, we call her the commander-in-chief. She literally she pushed us all over the place. She instructed us in terms of house chores, in terms of ensuring that we got out of our beds and we actually made them, whoever washed these. So she kept the house in order, and she made the job a lot easier for our parents. So for me, Olivia Chalimpa, who is my big sister, I don't take it for granted. I grew up as well with a couple of brothers, Alan Tumukunde, Darren Karashani, famous cousin Brian Kamusime. So for us, in terms of when you speak about the eating part, I left that category largely to the Brians and the Alans to take full control of.
I think they'll be watching this episode.
They will not like what I said about them.
We'll get back to that World Cup and Dad at some point. But I wanted us to now get to the first brush with this game. We've talked school, which is clearly the reason of what you earn. And when you open up your mouth to speak, really, we can see the background. When did you first, have a brush with this game called cricket, where that bat, someone might wonder whether you want to hit them or not. So where did this start?
Well, as I stated earlier, I was very lucky that I went to Lohana Academy for primary school. But cricket was never my first sport. I played a lot of other sports. I played badminton, lawn tennis, table tennis. Because I'd had a background, because I'd grown up at a Kampala club whereby I was exposed to a couple of racket sports. So I was able to pick those sports up early. So because I was reasonably good, at that time I think I was Uganda's under 13 seed 1 in badminton, same as table tennis. I remember I was not too far below the top 3 seeds in tennis as well. So generally I was decent enough.
By that you mean the likes of Duncan Mugabe?
Patrick Ochan, Ronald Semanda. So that was the age group that I used to play under. So again, as I was saying, that because I was good at those racket sports, a lot of the Asians at Lohana felt that because those sports had a lot of hand-eye coordination, a lot of them encouraged me to come and try out what cricket was like. Fortunately for me, I got there. It was about a ball and a bit of a stick that used to hit the ball. Not too different from lawn tennis. So when I got the bat in my hand, I was not too bad at it. I could pick the line and the length of the ball up. I could hit a few balls. So that's how I generally got thrown into the arena of cricket. Then I ended up playing mini cricket for Lohana Academy, and really, as they say, the rest is history. Once I went to Ontario School, I became the first under-15 captain, and I mean, Andrew, this is who I am, and that's why I'm here.
And you've been a captain since then.
I don't want to say that, but again, I want to say that I was very lucky that the first time there was ever an under-15 team that was ever assembled for Uganda, I was the person that was picked up as the captain. And for me, I think, again, it's a privilege that I enjoyed. But it was a privilege that came with a lot of responsibility. I was about 14. And I was playing with the guys who were from the greater schools, the Busoga College of this world. So for a young kid from Ontario School, I don't think I was any taller than the height that you're seated at right now. So I was a really, really small and short kid. So for me to have been trusted with that responsibility, I think I remember our under-15 coach was a gentleman called Ansasira Bashir. He eventually became the UCA chairperson. So for me to have gotten that responsibility at such a tender age, to captain guys from Mwiri, Ginger SS, for me I thought it was a serious privilege.
And right there, the same guys you played against in Mwiri scouted you and took you away for A-levels.
Yes, something like that. You seem to have your facts really, really intact. But yes, after the 4 years at Ontario School, where I didn't do too badly at Ontario School, I think I developed my hardball cricket game. I met a couple of very, very seasoned campaigners at entire school. A guy called Alvin Bagaya. He was my first ever hardball cricket captain. Eventually, right now, I think he's on the board of Uganda Cricket Association. There's a gentleman called Jokam. For me, he was a huge contributor to my career. He's one of those people that gave me my first ever coaching session. So for me, I thank God for his contribution to the career that I had. He gave us equipment, but his selflessness to financially support us and also spend his own time to come and teach us. For a guy who played for the national team at one time, he was an engineer at National Water. So for him to spend time from his home, his residence in Boma in Barra to come and train us young kids at Natari School, for me is I just cannot say thank you enough to them.
And then you move on straight up as a young kid and you're playing in the league. How do you get to Wanderers? It's a long story. I know Wanderers is your first love. No wonder you went back and that's where you still are. But how do you transition from this kid to the senior, club competition before we get to the World Cup?
Well, Andrew, for me, really, Wanderers is where my story started, especially my hardball story. I attended an academy they used to organize academies those days for students. So on holiday, and it was a December holiday camp whereby I attended it. And at that time, Sam Walusimbi was one of the employees at National Council Sports.
Yeah.
And he was standing, if you remember the old NCS stand, he was standing at the top and we were doing some bit of sport bowling on the ground. And he looked at me, he watched me, and after the session, he actually came and met me on the ground. So here I was, I didn't exactly know who Samji was, but the fact that this gentleman was speaking to me and asking me things about if I did not mind playing for his club. I didn't exactly know the club. But based on the demeanor that he had, I could tell that he was a man of greatness. He was a man that understood the game. And I could tell that the fact that he picked me out of a lot of about 50 young kids, I felt that it was special for him to have picked me out. And for me, it was another invitation that was very easy for me to actually simply look to try and embrace. But besides that, it was after that particular invitation, I think I then invited me for the Wanderers game. Next game was against SEC. What I remember about it was the last game of the season. It was against SEC. And in that game, when I played that game, we bowled first. My first 2 deliveries in the National League were 2 wickets. So, and remember, I was about 13, 14. So it was my first ever 50-over game. I had never played at that level. Samji, for me, was the person who gave me my first ever cricket whites. The thing I remember about those whites is that because Sam Walusimbi had played for ECAC was the combination team of East African nations, he gave me his pair of jerseys of whites that had ECAC on them. So it was a bit of a sentimental...
Did you fit in?
They were a bit big. I was a small kid, Andrew, clearly. They were a bit big, but the fact that they had come from him and they had that ECAC logo, it was a very, very special moment for me. I wished I had actually kept them a lot more. But for me to have played in that game, to play alongside Samuel Simbi, I remember in that game, the guys that were in the dressing room were people like John Nubia, he captained Uganda, Sempa Richard, Kenneth Legacy. So these were Tendo Mbazi. These were legends that I'd only been hearing about, guys that I'd been reading about in newspapers. So to be in the same dressing room with them, for me, I was beyond starstruck. So in that particular game, the sad part about it is I remember we lost the game. But I remember in that particular game, at the end of it, Samji told them that it was going to be his last ever game for Wanderers.
As a player?
Yes, as a player. And then he made some remarks about him finding a small kid that he felt would bowl the overs that he was originally bowling. So it was, in my opinion, it seemed like a case of the baton being handed down to a 13 or 14-year-old.
Did you understand at the time how big that was?
And I'm not the world's smartest.
Passing of the torch.
I am not the world's smartest guy, so I clearly did not even understand it. I thought it was a bit overwhelming.
The Samji we are talking about for viewers, this is a gentleman who played with the late John Nagenda at the World Cup.
Yes, he's very arguably one of the best, he's actually the greatest cricketer that has ever walked and donned the Uganda Cricket Cranes jersey. So for me, he's very easily the best ever for Uganda.
Wow. Yeah. And then, of course, you go through the different top flight teams, Tornado B, KICC, Premier, Wanderers. And amidst that, you're sweeping... Well. Yes. Yeah. And you're sweeping titles to every other... Wanderers, to 6. The last time we counted, was it 7 or 6?
About 7.
About 7. Yeah. You've won so much that you don't remember some of them. But yeah, I mean... This is huge. And of course, now you're back at Wanderers. But I want us to take just a little trip back to 2004 and 2005. Of course, 2004, quite very special in your life as Uganda's under-19 played at the World Cup in Bangladesh.
Yes.
The two World Cups in terms of performance did not come out as it was quite an experience, you'd say. But then you were kids. Yes, you lost, but you were touring the world. And the memories must be there.
The must be is a must, really, because those are memories we have continued to cherish till even our ages right now. That's over 20 years ago, but we still hold on to those memories very fondly, especially when we look back at the guys we played against in that World Cup. I'll tell you for a fact that one of the players we played against, the England captain, he was knighted. So eventually became a Sir Alistair Cook. So when you sit down and you look back at perhaps what looked like just an opportunity, but in case it was actually a privilege and an opportunity for us to rub shoulders with what was going to be eventually greatness. So to say that played alongside guys like those, for me, Dinesh Karthik of India, Shikhar Dhawan of India, I've just talked about Alistair Cook. So for me, the kind of Vernon Philander from South Africa, the kind of players, Tim Payne, former Australian captain, guys that we played against, for me, I sit back and I thank God for yet again that opportunity to do so.
How did you guys experience it, the very first World Cup in Bangladesh? You play your cricket at Lugogo, Chambogo, and then you arrive here and you're seeing players playing the kind of game that perhaps you've not seen before. Were you surprised? Did you have any cultural shock, or you were actually inspired to beat these guys?
Of course, the culture shock was always going to be there. I think, Andre, I think you mentioned it earlier. We were the first team to ever play in a World Cup, an actual cricket World Cup. So, one, we already felt that we were achievers at that stage. The fact that we had actually gotten to that holy grail of our age group, the fact that we were going to play against the best players in the world at our age group, for us, we were already starstruck. We already felt that we had achieved something. So the fact that we're then going to go to Bangladesh to play in the World Cup, one, we originally had stories about how Kenya had struggled in the previous World Cups, under-19 World Cup. So for us, it was never, we always felt that there was not much pressure in terms of expecting results from us. We just felt that we needed to go there and try and use the opportunity to want to make a name for ourselves, but also to try and light whatever small opportunity would be there for Uganda cricket. I want to say, use this opportunity to actually say that we actually did. We picked up, I think, one or two victories in that tournament. But I'll tell you, the biggest thing that we got from that tournament is something that has lasted over 20 years. In that tournament, Freddie Savide, brother to Charles Waiswa, he was with us in that World Cup. And Freddie Savide started a conversation with the guys. That guy was the manager of the Australian under-19 team in that tournament. He started a conversation with that gentleman, and that conversation actually culminated into Bankstown. Bankstown is a club in Australia. Culminated into Bankstown sending Uganda cricket equipment from that time till today. So it just goes to show you that perhaps the currency in which people trade, or what the KPIs at the end of the day should always be, cannot always be just what happens on the field. But the kind of impact that conversation had to Uganda cricket, I'll tell you, is, in my opinion, very easily over 10 billion shillings right now.
Interesting. And then 2006, before we get into the other things, I read a quote. You were talking about Hamza Saleh, who was the captain.
Yes.
And you said if you could only eat from half his palm, I mean, you'd be everything in the world. Was he that special?
In my opinion, yes. Hamza Saleh, just to let you know, I think the closest I ever came to him is the fact that we were born on the same day. So he's my birthday mate. He's my very good friend. I do a lot of his legal work. But in terms of the cricketing aspect, I'll tell you, for me, for a fact, Hamza Saleh was one of the hardest batsmen I ever had to play against. So for me, I always felt it was a big opportunity, a big pleasure to have him on my side. But the ease with which the game came to him naturally, I'll tell you for a fact, Andrew, that in my opinion, he was very easily the best batsman of our generation, at least of our age group. His flair and his ability to make things that look difficult actually look out very easy. So for me, he was, to answer your question, yes, he was actually that good in terms of talent.
It really speaks volumes of how good he was. Perhaps he did not last long enough to fulfill what you saw in him, but at least you're still in touch. You talked about your late dad. here you are at your second World Cup, and you can't wait to get home
Yes.
and relive the memories with mom and dad
Yeah.
and the family. And you arrive at the airport, it's mom who picked you.
Yes, kind of.
Kind of. Okay, I get it. It was Dennis Msali's mom, right?
Not really. Just to take you back actually to that particular one. It was one of those days. One, we had been in the World Cup in Sri Lanka. We had been there for quite a long time.
Yeah.
Because we needed to. Usually, we used to first go for a period where we'd have to acclimatize. We're there for about 10 days before the tournament starts. The World Cups are always long. So it was on that day, and strangely, that one day that my dad passed is the day that we picked up our first victory in that actual.
And you had no
event.
idea.
I had no idea, but I'll tell you something for a fact is that I just had a bad feeling. Just that bad aura around what was happening on the day. So that day we beat Scotland. I played in that game, but I don't know if, I don't want to call it sixth sense. It was just something just in me, just telling me that something was not right. I don't know if, at that time I didn't know whether it was about the game, but I just did not feel, as we usually say, as the Gen Z say, I didn't feel 100. And fortunately for us, we won the game. But after we won the game, I think my family back in Kampala got in touch with our manager. Our manager in that tournament was Justin Lijalingi, former CEO and big contributor to Uganda cricket.
Yes.
They got in touch with him. Then I was the vice captain of the side. However, I then found Justin together with Hamza Saleh was our captain. And I think the coach, they were in a bit of a meeting. So I found it a bit strange that if it was a serious cricket-related meeting,
you should have
I
been
would
there.
have been in the meeting.
Yes.
But here it was, 3 guys having a meeting, and I am not participating in it, but I brushed it off and life went on. So after that game, they didn't tell me. Somehow I think the rest of the players got to know. Then we played one more game, I think against Canada. We played one more game, then we had to return.
And did you play that game?
Yes, I played. I wasn't a bad cricketer as a player, so more often than not, I would get a starting slot.
I mean, in relation to what they knew that you didn't know yet.
Because I didn't know, I think they didn't think that it would affect me in any way, so I played that particular game. And I actually think now is a good time as well to take the point to thank them for the way they managed that situation. I would imagine that that kind of situation is not one that someone goes to school to be taught about, but the kind of personnel management that Justin Lijalingi, Andrew May and Hamza Saleh for me, what they showed at that time for me, it was tremendous, and I think it's the best of supporting perhaps troubling players on when things like those, tragedies like those actually happen on tour.
And then you arrive at the airport. Have they told you yet at this point?
And now then I arrive at the airport. But at that time, my mom was heading the immigration at the airport, at Entebbe Airport. And so I was very used to actually coming back and finding her there. If I didn't find her there, at least I'd find someone who would tell me what the message had left.
Yeah.
But I get there and I hand my passport to the immigration officer that was handling us. The immigration officer read my name and basically looked at the person next to her in the other till, the other immigration officer. Looked at it, stamped, and the non-verbal communication just did not communicate the world's biggest welcome. It just seemed like something was up. Because when I also asked her where Madame was, she didn't seem to want to tell me anything that had really happened. Wow. So at that time, of course, we get the usual practice for us is once we get past immigration, we get into our team coasters and we head back to Kampala. But at that time, because I told you I'd been having a bad sixth sense, and when I was on tour, when we were in the World Cup, I used to communicate a lot with family, either both my mom and dad. But those couple of days, I was not able to get hold of anyone, any of my parents, my siblings. No one was actually communicating. Facebook, no one was actually letting me know what was happening. But by the time I got to the coaster, we're moving to Kampala. In my mind, it might sound a bit bad. I just felt like I needed to speak to my mom, surprisingly, and I just felt that if anything has gone wrong, it had better not be, say, my mom. It's a bit selfish to say, but at that time, that's what I was feeling. And then as we were driving, as they were bring us from Entebbe to Lugogo, I received a call from my mom. And once I picked up and I recognized it was my mom's voice, in my mind, I just knew it was my dad. I was happy, but I just knew it is something to do with my dad, because my dad had been diabetic and he had been having some issues with his health. So once I spoke to her, it was very bittersweet in the sense that, one, I was lucky that my mom was alive, but it also meant that I'd lost one half of my parents. Then she notified me that she would not be able to pick me. She was sorry that she could not be at the airport. But then she told me that someone was going to pick me from the airport. She told me that one of my relatives was going to pick me from actually Lugogo. Now, when I get to Lugogo, when we're entering Lugogo, one of my good parents, he used to come once in a while to watch the game. We get to meet. One of my good parents used to serve in the military. So by the time I get to Lugogo and we get in, I see one of the military cars. And when I see the military cars, and then I see him seated in the car, like he was standing right outside the car on phone. So I see him. It was another bit of a point of reflection that I was wondering. He would not pick me as often as he did. The fact that he was here, it just seemed like it was a confirmation that something was really, really wrong.
But yeah.
Yeah. So guys, we get our kit bags off the car, and then for some strange reason, I go say hi to him. As I went to say hi to him, the rest of the team is like in a meeting, and again it's without me. So I then come back when they're done with the meeting. I just came back. As I was coming, they dispersed from that particular convergence. When I asked them what was happening, they said they would see me tomorrow, the following day. And I didn't put one and two together. I just got my bags. The bodyguard put my bags in his car, and we left. But we left in such a hurry that I didn't even wait. Usually we used to have a debrief. Like they tell us what is happening. We're back from the tour. There would be this and this meeting. But I didn't even wait for that. They allowed me to go. So that time we stayed in Kansanga. So as we moved, and I'm asking him questions, he's asking me about the tournament. I'm giving him a brief. As we moved, we got to about Chibuli. And then he tells me that, something has happened. And Muzei has actually passed on a couple of days ago. But we couldn't tell you. And the family, everyone is at home. So do not get home and be surprised. Just know everyone has been waiting for you, but that is what has happened. So it gives me that preparation, that tough talk of obviously it's going to be difficult, but we are here with you. So yeah, I just literally had to put on my big boy underpants and go through it. But at least informed me then. So by the time I got to home, the cars, of course, all over the place. I had a bit of an idea.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was 18, but
that was tough.
Tough, yes, but I thank God that I had him for at least those years. Many people do not get that opportunity. So for me, there's a lot. I'm a very positive person. There's a lot that I thank God for. Yeah.
And are you his oldest?
Yes, I am.
So you were the big boy at 18?
Yes, I was.
And how did you navigate from that back into life?
Well, as I said, Andrew, for me, grief is one. Many people have so many ways of how they deal with it. I think for me, because I'm a very calm and I like to be very laid back, it just helped me. You can just take a back seat and just relax, take a back seat and reflect, look at the world totally differently. It meant that now I only had to say one parent, but it also meant that, as I had said, that I had to grow up beyond the boy that I was. The man had to come out of that boy. So, a couple of responsibilities obviously flew onto my shoulders. Yeah. So for me, it was not the world's biggest, biggest challenge, because I never had issues with trying to lead. I was not a very good politician, but I liked to do the fact that I can try and lead people and persuade people to believe in a certain direction. So for me, the fact that my siblings warmed up to the fact that now I was actually supposed to be the one to try and head the rest of the guys. For me, it was the support system around my family, my friends, my cricket friends were there, guys from Mwiri, Ntare, the cricket fraternity, the entire fraternity. Just to know it was a massive wealth of support that I got.
And of course, the responsibility on your young shoulders at the time, you were the one also holding your mom's hand now to move on to the next.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's just no blueprint or manual that someone can be handed down to be able to read and understand how to navigate it. But I guess with the strength of the Lord, somehow I managed one day at a time. The sun always rises, and here we are.
Well, we get back to the Oval,
yes.
And there's this amazing tournament in Bermuda, 2016?
2013.
2013, where you were the MVP of the tournament.
Yeah.
Of course, Uganda, there was no match where you were man of the match, but at the end, at the collection of points overall, you were the MVP. You were consistent in your scores.
There were actually I won 2 man of match awards in that tournament. One against Italy, the other one against Nepal.
Okay.
Yeah, but for me, again, as Andrew, for me, I like to restate that I want to believe I was very, very lucky. I was not the world's most talented cricketer, but I had a decent understanding of the game. So that understanding of the game helped me understand, one, that I needed to work hard, but it also helped me understand that if I were ever to have any advantage on the cricket field, I needed to be able to, for lack of a better word, outsmart a lot of the opposition. So for me, it's a strength that I looked to try and ensure that I held very firmly. I like to. I am a scholar of the game. I like to pay attention to detail. So I used whatever knack of intelligence I could actually get and put together to try and do well. And I was very lucky that I also played with a group of very talented cricketers. The Arthur Chobes, Roger Mukasa, Zirabatha. His worship is a magistrate of the courts in Uganda, magistrate courts of Uganda. So for me, I played with the Charles Waiswa, Richard Okia, Deus Momusa, Brian Franco Suga. Yes, I played with a bunch of very, very talented cricketers, and for me, no success that I ever received can ever be watered down to anything less than the contribution that those guys actually had.
And that's 2013. But before that, 2 years earlier,
yeah,
someone who is not as naturally gifted in terms of physicality, but who has the heart of a lion, showed up at Lugogo Cricket Oval in 2011.
Yeah,
when we were playing, that's the Africa Division 1.
Yeah,
against Namibia in the final, who we had lost to earlier in the twice. Yeah. But then you stood up. Of course, for most of us, we remember the 2 catches that you pulled off. But overall, what a tournament you had.
Yeah, I think for me, the fact that we were playing it on Ugandan soil, the magnitude of the tournament, I like to tell guys that it is marginal proportions basically compared to what could be the AFCON of football. So for me, that kind of tournament was equal to what the AFCON is in terms of cricket. So for us to do it on home soil and beat the top-ranked side, Namibia, and beat them in the fashion in which we did in front of our home fans in Lugogo, for me, I don't think, when I was a 10-year-old kid, maybe walking around Lugogo, that would have been the perfect dream that I would have wanted. So for us to do it in front of our fans, some of our family members were there. I do not think I would have asked for a better way of doing it. So yes, we as a team had a tremendous tournament. I never like to give a lot of credit to individuals, but generally I think the youngsters in that side, Roger Mukasa, Chobe, Arthur at the time, they made good over their talent, and their contributions were massive. Franco Subuga, his experience as always. So for me to have been there to actually lead them is something that I never ever take for granted.
And that's the tournament that actually you showed them that you are their captain.
Yeah, that's actually true. I think, many people forget that I made my debut as an 18-year-old right after that Under-19 World Cup. And in my debut, I was actually national team captain. So it's a very strange record, but it was at a time when besides the fact that I had done decently well in that World Cup, I had commanded and pushed for a starting position in the senior team. I think that time my figures were good enough to get me to the side, and they clearly did. But that time, Sam Walusimbi was the national team coach, and for him to have trusted me as an 18-year-old to be the captain of the side, I was leading guys like... perhaps for me, the best player ever played with Kenneth Kamyuka. Kamyuka, Joel Oluenyi. On that side, there was Franco Subuga. Franco Subuga and Kenneth Kamyuka had just been my school coaches at Busoga College, Muri. So for me to actually...
And you were captaining them?
Yes, for me to actually captain them
as an 18-year-old.
For me, one, it was overwhelming. I was thrown into the deep end, but I'm the type of lad that likes to thrive. I always thrived in those difficult situations.
I'd love to know, how was the locker room? Your former coaches, you're 18 years, and you're captaining them. How did it come off as normal?
I don't think normal is the word you would use in that kind of scenario. Yeah, you that may not be the word. But to be honest with you, Andrew, is that because I had done well at a World Cup, in that dressing room I was probably one of the about only 3 players who had been at a World Cup. So in short, we had played at a level higher than the Kamyukas, who never played in a World Cup, for starters. But also more importantly, and I think what was important to understand, is that the players in the dressing room, the coaches that you said Franco Subugas of this world, they knew that generally I had a decent understanding of the game. So I was not, whereas I may not have been the best batter or bowler in the dressing room, they knew that I was a thinker of the game. I liked to think the game. Even when we were playing our trial games, I used to give them certain scenarios, come up with certain strategies. that they had seen that would actually work. So for me, in terms of commanding the dressing room, I never had that challenge. But I also always felt that it's always easier to do a leadership role if you're leading from the front. So I always knew that for me to have the command of the dressing room, I needed to do my part well. I was a bowling all-rounder, so I needed to bowl well and then be able to lead the rest of the sides for me to get as much belief in the dressing room. So for me, that was not a massive challenge. But I'll tell you the truth, I was overwhelmed because it meant that each time before we ran on to the field, I had to give the last team speech.
Yeah,
I'm speaking to the legends that I'm talking about. So for me, it was a massive opportunity. I'm in the dressing room, and the guys that are surrounded me have massive egos, massive reputations. They had been at international cricket for a much longer period, but I was very grateful for the support that they did give me.
I don't know whether people realize how tough that was, but it also goes to say to show that this whole foundation was formed way young. Remember, from when you lost dad and then took responsibility. You were a leader way early. And of course, when I speak to some of your colleagues, they know you as a leader and someone who stands for what you believe in. And now, in our sporting setup, in our social fabric generally, that doesn't bode well with people who are in authority. And sometimes you're called into the board meetings with the Uganda Cricket Association as a captain, and you spoke your mind. And that didn't go down well. Take us, I'm the fly on the wall, and they've called you in, and what they're saying, you actually do not think they relate to what you want.
Well, you're right, and Andrew, you rightly stated that it's simply a society kind of narrative that we obviously have. We never take a lot of a dissent and a contrasting opinion very well. So it's not just in cricket; it's generally, as you rightly stated, the nation as a nation. So it's and largely from those in power. So yes, I fell victim to one of those. But I'll tell you for a fact that the one time that I ever had to address perhaps some of the board members, that time the chairperson was Richard Mwami, former national team player. He was a massive associate at MTN at the time. He was the chairman of UC at that time. I'll tell you that for me generally, whereas I had that challenge with him, I led a player strike in his era. And our player strike was largely around welfare because at the time UC had started receiving a certain amount of money that was supposed to be geared towards preparations of the national teams. And the amount of money we were being given per our contract we felt was way, way, way below what we should have been given. And for me, it was a fight that I took to the chairperson himself and the board. I'll tell you, and to the board itself. And whereas I lost my captaincy for leading the strike, the chairman Mwami eventually fired me for doing so. But I felt at the end of the day, it justified it because we then got a pay rise in terms of the remuneration we were getting. I'll tell you something about that, what you just said, that whereas Chairman Richard Mwami was the chairperson, Dennis Musalu, who is a very good friend of mine, was actually on that same board. And they know that I'm very principled, and I will stand, more often than not, I'll stand by what is actually correct. And even when we have differences in opinion, I never have challenges addressing to you what I actually think. At the end of the day, you will make the decision, but you will not make the decision without having the information from our side. So that, and I respect Chairman Mwami for it. For me, he's one of the best chairpersons that UC has ever had. I thought he had the ability, to manage situations. He's one of those that took very, very tough decisions. I think he bought the land that UC does have. So for me also as well, to get fired by a chairperson that perhaps for me, I drew a lot of inspiration and admiration from him. For me, guys like Francis Kasinduchi, I thought they were very good administrators of how they ran the game. But I don't see the harmness in being a sacrificial lamb for the greater cause.
This all comes with politics, sometimes team selections, and as captain, you're not going to do it for everyone. You have to disappoint some people. How do you navigate those challenges that are facts of life in your role? So how do you disappoint some people, and how do you make others happy? How do you play that politics as captain?
Andrew, for me, I think politics is one of those things that I'm a very big novice in. I'm not an expert at politics. I'm very principle driven. I'm driven by a lot of logic. More often than not, I like to put thought to a lot of the things that I'll either say or do. So in terms of politics, I may not be the right person to give you the answer. But I've always felt that more often than not, sometimes people need a leader more than a politician. So rather than be a captain that is going to politicize everything, They just need you to actually lead them, either give them direction and guidance in terms of the direction that they should be going. But also, more importantly, I think it's key for people to understand what you're saying. They may not exactly agree with you, but they need to be able to understand where you're coming from, what your thought process is, and then they know that that's the reason why you made the decision. I thought many times the conflict arises from the fact that a lot of information is not shared with the players or people, because the decision will be made and I do not even understand where the decision has come from. So that's where a lot of the disgruntlement comes from. So for me, I felt that one of the things I owed the players was to ensure that at least I keep them posted on what is happening, give them my line of thought, listen to what they think, and then we get to a point of where we decide on a particular direction we take. I like to give this example is that on the Cricket Cranes team when I played, some of my biggest friends were Deus Mums and Brian Masaba. Both of them were very good lads, good players, and more importantly, they had good cricket heads. They were good around listening to instructions and playing with a team plan. But at the time they both played, they were basically like for like meaning they were both medium pacers who could bat in the mid order. However, because they were my very good friends, many people used to think that I should automatically play the two of them each time we're playing. But and more often than not, if you go back and look at the data, I think they rarely played in the same games together, because the team we had at the time could not afford to play two medium pacers who could bat at that position. So I could only afford to play one at a time. So it just goes to show you that, and they understood it.
Oh, okay. I wanted to know how did they take it.
They understood it. I also had some difficult questions. Both of them, I always thought Deus Momuza was always going to be a better batsman than a medium pacer. He eventually, later on, he transitioned into becoming an actual batter. I had the same conversation with Brian Masaba. I always thought he would be a better leg spinner, mid-order batsman than a medium pacer. As day follows night, that's exactly what he did. And later on did well in the rest of his career. His first captain, Uganda Cricket captain, take us the World Cup. So for me, I always felt that it's important that people have honest conversation, however difficult it is. Have honest conversation with them and let them know where you're coming from.
And just as you should be flourishing at this time, but then 2015 you announced, I don't know whether you announced, but there wasn't much cricket at the time, I remember. But that's when you now focus on education. Like you go for your law degree. How did that happen? What influenced it? Because that's the first feat of retirements. Retirements that happened. That's 2015. But at the close of the decade, you're still playing. So tell us, how did that happen?
Okay, 2015, I retire the first time. And a friend of mine likes to make a lot of noise that I keep retiring. And then I come back. But 2015 is when I first officially retired. And at that time I retired, had nothing to do with academics or career. I just felt the time the administrators, then I think it was actually probably still even Mr. Richard Mwame, felt at that time the aspects of welfare were never being taken care of, as well as the game had evolved. So we always felt that the evolution, whereas it was happening in all other countries, needed to be reflected in Uganda cricket, and it wasn't at the time. But I was lucky again that later on, that time the coach was Steve Tikolo. Steve Tikolo called me to his, he had an apartment in Bukoto, called me to his apartment. We had a very, very in-detail conversation of why he felt that I might have something more that I could bring back and add to the side. So he felt, we had a detailed conversation to and now to why perhaps he felt that I could add some value into the side. And as day follows night, I eventually came out of retirement, joined the squad. When I joined the squad...
And what year is that, when you come out of retirement?
I think 2016.
2016. So 2015, retire. Then you are somehow cajoled back.
Yes.
Okay.
I get back into the squad. I had to put in the... Because as well at that time, I think I was also having a couple of issues with my career, because I was not able to make as much time for practice. And when I played, I was that kind of believer in people need to practice as much as they can so that they actually contribute on the ground. So I felt that I didn't want to do something that I was heavily against while I was still playing. So, but we got into an understanding with coach Steve Tikolo. We agreed on a certain number of hours I needed to put in per week for me to be able to come up for selection. And the compromise was, I told him that I needed to first put in those hours before I could actually confirm that I was back, which I did. And I was lucky again to get back into the national team fold. 2016 and 2017 is when was my last game for the Cricket Cranes, a game that I never like to talk about. We lost. My last game for the Cricket Cranes was one against the USA in Entebbe in a game we lost and unfortunately got relegated. So for me, it was always a very bitter pill to actually to take. The fact that I had played for such a long time. I started in 2005. So to play for 12 years and have my career end in that kind of fashion is something I'd always never wanted.
And at home.
And at home, and in a game whereby I'd bowled well, but the fact that we lost under my captaincy, I had to take full responsibility over it. So it is always something that I'd always wanted to try and write away from and try and get another opportunity to play for Uganda, until I got to a point whereby I had to go back to law school, and the career took full control, and I figured I was never going to get the time to actually compete with the players that were in the side. So I figured now that time was more recently, about 2-3 years ago, is when I actually completely announced my retirement from the Cricket Cranes, because there was a bit of speculation whether I'd be coming back after law school or not. A lot of international.
And you were training with them?
Yes.
With the national team?
Yes. Under Lawrence Matlane, I was back training. A lot of the players I used to play against internationally were asking me if I was actually going to play. So it was a case of I needed to decide if it's something I was actually still willing to do. But I then figured that, one, I didn't have as much time, but also I felt that the Cricket Cranes at the time, the setup was totally complete. We had a lot of players, a lot of bases were covered. So I felt that it was a good time for the younger players to take full control and allow the transition to happen. Yeah.
And you're quite futuristic in the way you do things. You're also a founding member of Ontario League?
Yes.
Yes. By founding member, is it your idea? Or why did you guys decide to do that?
Well, founding members would say basically the group of guys. I don't want to say it particularly belongs to one or two individuals. It was just a group of guys. We used to play in what was a Sunday league under a name called Crichton FC. Crichton was the first headmaster of Ontario Schools, a person of one of the schools. So we used to play as Ontario Bees in a Sunday league, and we used to get hammered quite a lot. On more Sundays than not, would go when we had considered about 7 to 8 goals every Sunday, until this group of players in that team decided and said, no, I think we had enough battering and hammering. We decided to rather have the fun against each other in our school teams, and that's what led to the birth of the Ontario Lions League. We started in 2014. Started out as just 4 teams, 4 classes, and it has mammothly grown to what it is. We are massive East African and looking to be a continental brand.
And the other day you painted my town, my city, blue, Fort Portal.
Yes.
Well done on that. Now, of course, yes, when you are doing your law degree, you are not actively playing for the national team, but you are still in the game.
Yeah.
How do you manage to balance school, even when you are still playing cricket? I mean, with the national team, but also you're playing school cricket, then the club cricket, and the national team, but still you were in school. Yeah. How hard is it to keep focused on the books?
Yeah.
And also producing for cricket? Because cricket, I mean, this is physical, mental endurance, but then you still need a fresh mind to read books. How do you play the two?
Again, I think for me, I was very lucky, first and foremost, that my employers at the time, I think that time I was still at Synergy Surveyors, Humphrey Mitanda. Time I'd worked with Unilever as well. I'd worked at Equity Bank. I was lucky that a lot of my employers knew my background as a national team cricketer. So one, they could allow me a bit of time, to travel, but also to put in time to practice. But by the time I went to do the law degree, I was extremely focused on what I wanted. So, and I was an evening student, and I knew that I needed to work during the day to make sure by 5:30 I'm actually at Makerere for class. And I like to fly under the radar. I never like to be in things like these, Andrews. But yes, I like to fly under the radar. So I liked the evening program because it allowed me, to work. And even after work, come to class, even when I was tired. Because I was so driven to the fact that I wanted to actually get this done and achieve it. It was something that I really needed to do. I went to law school based on an experience that I had suffered. So I knew that... and I knew because I'm sacrificing playing for the national team for this law degree, I needed to get it right.
What's that incident that forced you to do law?
It's a bit of a tough one. That time I was working with a company called Synergy Surveyors, and I was assigned to lead a team in a district called Queen District, whereby we were going to do some work on perhaps 2 or 3 square miles of land. So I was the team head, so I was supposed to supervise what was happening. And in that process, while I was supervising one of the teams, we suffered a bit of an incident whereby the locals attacked my team with the illusion or with the imagination that we had intended to steal their land. So it was one of those bad experiences.
Wow.
And the fact that I can't thank that it was an old man that time who stopped the gang from actually mobbing us and basically beating us. We were lucky that that old man then stopped the gang from leeching us, and I told them that these guys are just they've just come from Kampala. They hired them. They do not know the challenges about the land. So the old man stopped the mob from literally beating us. So when we were coming back, we had gotten that work through a lawyer friend of mine who was working for that company. He's the one who connected me, the survey firm, to that work. So when I called him and told him about the incident, that what had happened, how we nearly got killed, and how we had to abandon the instructions and come back to Kampala. And then I also found out that the law firm had been paid perhaps 3 to 4 times more than we were paid. Us who went to the field, I remember we swam in that field work. It was so difficult that we had to walk through some seasonal swamps with the water literally getting to our waists while carrying survey machinery. So it was tough work. The fact that we nearly lost our lives. And then when I found out that the law firm was paid times 4 what we were paid, for me it was a light bulb moment. I felt that I needed to move up the food chain and get out of that particular where I was, but look to climb up. So I was lucky that at that time the pre-entries at Makerere had not yet been done. So I just quickly went and applied, did the pre-entries. Fortunately, passed them and went to law school, did that, went to LDC, completed it. And now I'm a practicing advocate of the High Court.
You know, that story is very powerful because it shows the drive that's in you.
Yeah.
A misfortune happened and you actually made it your business to go to school and turn it around.
Exactly.
and we have a lawyer now because of Quen. If you hadn't traveled for Quen,
Yes.
I wouldn't have a lawyer here.
Not at all.
So right now, where are you practicing from?
Greystone Advocacy is where I practice. It's a firm that some of the partners there are former judges, Justice David Wangutusi, alongside Justice John Wilson Kwesiga. So it's a firm that I practice at, and for me, I do not take again that opportunity for granted.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm also a human resource expert. Just so you know, my first degree was largely in human resource.
Okay.
So some places as well, some workplaces, I actually still practice human resource. So I'm a jack of quite a number of trades.
Behind all this, of course, you've already talked about the support system from mom and the family, but then there's your family.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the people you do this for,
Yeah.
when you leave your home, you're going to work for some people at home. You were a father, young father as a teenager, but now you actually are now also a father. And I've been told by some of your closest friends that a great father at that. Tell me about your 2 boys and the girl.
Well, I may not be sure how to describe it that way, but I think the best people to describe it are those around me. I can't be the one to do that. But yes, for me, in 2010, I think for me, my life totally changed. I was very, very lucky and fortunate that I received the birth of my firstborn, Kwezi Casey Karashani. She's now 14, turning to 15.
Yes.
At that time, I will tell you for a fact that I tried to stay around for the birth of her. But unfortunately, because of a bit of a slight delay, reasons obviously beyond me, I had to then travel to South Africa to join the rest of the team. And she came into this world when I was on national duty in South Africa. So for me, that moment in 2010, 15th of September, totally changed my perspective of how I see life. Later on in 2015, in February, I then received the birth of my second child, my son, Kwera Crichton, Karashani, till... Again, strangely, I'd also gone away for a burial of a colleague, cricket-related. Then in 2017, 31st of May, I received the birth of my second boy, who is Kwega Quinten Karashani. But I'll tell you that Kwega was born 2 or 3 days after my last game in Cricket Crane's colours. Hence why I call him Kwega. Kwega basically simply means like to learn.
To learn,
yes.
I know.
Yeah, so
Kwega.
it was my last game for Uganda. And he was born 2-3 days. So I had to come out of camp to actually go and attend to that birth. So for me, all my 3 children have been surrounded by circumstances of cricket.
And it all goes back to dad.
Yes.
Dad dies when you are away.
Yes.
You have new kids come to the world when you are away.
Yeah.
And you added the name Karashan, which is your dad's name, after your dad passing.
Yes.
You were Davis Arinito.
Yes.
Why?
I was born Ernito Davis with the family name Karashani. When my dad passed on, at that time, based on those the cultural settings and aspects. Then at the time I was obligated to take up his father's name, which was obviously would have meant my grandfather and his name. So I was obligated to actually take up the name as a surname so that I can perhaps later on, God willing, pass the name down the line. And for me, it was a case of making sure that I met the obligations of the family and the rest of the lineage.
Awesome. Yeah. Talking Kwega, Kwera, and Casey.
Yes.
Kwezi, Casey. I understand Dennis Musali is the godfather.
Yes, Dennis Musali is her godfather. Whether he does a good job at it, that's a story for another day. But yes,
he'll be watching. So back to this, I have some surprise for you. I don't know if you know these people. I think the camera people need to flip in and tell me if you know these people.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
If the camera can zoom in. So that's, you can show us who is Kwezi.
Just for clarity's sake, the young lady is Kwezi Casey Karashani. The gentleman is Kwera Crichton Karashani. And the young gentleman there in the blackish vest is Kwega Quinton Karashani.
And behind the Googles is the skipper.
Someone is not too bad.
And this one here, the cameraman will also have to do a good job. This is where you actually reproduced yourself.
Let me take a look at that. Where have you been, wherever you dug this from? But yes, these are the three reasons really that I wake up to go and grind in this Kampala, this potholed city of ours. Yeah, so for me, it's the three. And this function was my young sister's giveaway. It happened at our home in Mbarakashari. So yes, these are very special moments for me. And perhaps it's I've always told people, for me, being a father is a job that, among all the jobs that I've had, it's a job that I cannot afford not to do well. I must excel at it. Everything else can fail, but being a father for me it's a must excel at.
This is beautiful. So when you go home, tell them that the podcast you've been on has sent these pictures to them.
Much appreciated.
I think we'll get them in an envelope.
Thanks a lot.
When we are done.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I saw those and I thought these are real.
Have you heard of the right of privacy? To privacy.
And the thing is, right now, you are giving me the right because you are an accomplice.
You know, you
on
could
the podcast.
You could get sued. You could for infringing on our privacy.
Well, the role of sport,
yeah,
and the person you've become. How significant has sport been to your life?
Well, Andre, I hope unless you're trying to say the podcast can go on for another 10, 20 hours if we speak about the significance that sport has in terms of shaping what the individual can eventually become. But to sum it up for me, really, sport teaches you things that you may not necessarily get from a blackboard or a whiteboard itself. For me, the aspects to do with teamwork, sport teaches you that teamwork ceases to be optional. If you play team sport, it's not optional. You must learn to rely on others to actually do their part. For the car to actually move and work and move in one direction, it means everyone else must do their part. So you must be able to be a team player if you actually want to make progress. Sport teaches you how to be resilient because you play sport and you get resilient.
Yeah,
I'll tell you for a fact, and between you and I also live in Kampala. You get to become resilient enough to survive these potholes in the city. So you're forced to actually learn to stand still, be firm, even when times of adversity do come, with the hope that things will eventually turn on the flip side of it. But sport also teaches you to be very hardworking. I'll tell you for a fact, for me, I never got anything on a silver platter. I never grew up perhaps with a silver spoon in my mouth. So I had to work for everything that I was able to achieve, and something that I really do not take for granted. I also think sport teaches you the aspect of luck. You need to understand just how important luck is in everything that you do. For me to have played with the guys that I played with, I've told you before, and I just cannot overstate it. I was extremely lucky. So to get that opportunity for me is something that I do not take for granted. But overall, sport for me, to anyone out there, I would encourage them, whatever age they are, to get into sport. The aspects of life that it teaches you, you'll never find a particular master's degree that will teach you some of those things.
And Davis, we've known each other for some time now, and you know how passionate I am about preparing an athlete as a whole being, not just a player.
Perhaps that is the second most passionate thing about. I know you're very passionate about a formerly mid-table team where Red sliding their way down. They're taking a huge nosedive. Wow. So I know you are a lot more passionate about that, but I will stick to the question that you asked. Let's go to the second most passionate thing you talked about.
So, and you are seated here in front of me, and you are a very good example of how an athlete can actually prepare for their life when they throw away that bat, when they no longer have the energy to chase after balls at the oval. Just how do you that? Does it matter where you're coming from, the background, or as an athlete, you actually have the ability and capacity to understand that you need to prepare now before you cross over that line?
I think for me, the preparation of, I don't want to call it the afterlife per se, but the afterlife in
after
quotes.
sports.
Yeah, it's a reality. It doesn't differentiate whether you're an athlete or not. The same cycle is something that people go through in life. Even if they do not play sport, you get to a point where your retirement age obviously kicks in for many people, and you're forced obviously to take the sideline. But it's key that individuals stay alive to the reality. The reality for me, as I always told people in sport, is that many people forget that the time when you make your debut for these teams that you play for, it means, in implication, it means someone else is moving out. So many people forget that when they come in, someone else is moving out. So it's important that you understand that as you come in, you never get a stamp on your forehead that is cementing that you'll be in the side forever. So it's important that you understand that because your career is just it's just a time span of your life.
Normally we say at least 10 years.
Yes, that's if you're lucky to get to the 10-year mark. Yeah, so it's key that you understand it even before you come into the side itself. You must know that you'll have a limited amount of time to actually do this. I don't like to call it a job. To actually serve in this capacity or the responsibility of playing for the national teams, for me, it is the utmost honor. So you must understand that one, you'll only do it for a certain amount of time, but you'll also know that there will be a time when you will need to make room for someone else to come in. It may not be voluntary, but it will happen. You will either get kicked out or long story short, you will get out. So it's key for you to understand. Once you understand that from the get-go, it allows you to prepare for the life after sport so that you get to organize yourself. We live in an area whereby there's a lot of capacity building in terms of athletes. You can do coaching, physiotherapy, analysts. You can become an analyst. You can become a coach, umpire. So there's a huge career pathway for a lot of athletes past their playing days. So it's key that you start to have those conversations with people that mean the very best for you. Get yourself empowered, go to school, study a couple of these things so that by the time you're moving out, you have already prepared for that aspect of life. But also understand that when you at a certain time, you will stop being a coach. And when you stop being a coach, you must have something planned that you're going to do post the sports life. So for me, it's it goes down to understanding and staying within the realms of the reality that you'll not do sport forever.
You have your bat up there. Sometimes you play for fun in terms of the national team, but you are still playing serious cricket with Wanderers as well. But still, you have to appreciate that you are at that end of playing.
Yes.
What's the plan?
Well, our reality is that obviously by the time I came back to Wanderers, I was already in the evening of my career. So I felt that I needed to return back to the club that had literally given me everything in cricket itself. So I came back to Wanderers, ideally not to play for too long, try and get into administration, find a way of giving back to the next generation or group of players at the club and probably even country. So for me, I already understand that I'm on my way out. And so besides being, say, a cricketer on the field, I hope to get into some sort of sports administration, regardless of the particular sport. Fortunately, at least I've been around quite a number of other sports. So for me, regardless of the sport, Steve Jobs used to have a very famous question he used to ask people before he employed them and asked them, what is that passionate thing you can do for free? I think for me, my answer is sports. Sports, any contribution for me to sports.
I can't agree more.
Yeah, so for me, any contribution to sport, I would do very easily. So besides playing, I intend to of course, continue my legal practice, to continue to do my HR consultancy. I am already in the process of starting a bit of a child sports program. So very, very soon I'll be letting you know what it's going to be about. We used to have one in cricket, the G-Next, but now I'm intending to have something for the slightly younger age group of students and players. So it is something that is already in the pipeline, and I'm nearly getting to that point. But besides that, I want to be a family man, eventually have a family, eventually have a wife. have my children, and basically continue to try and grow from strength to strength. So
You already have the children.
yes, so now hopefully is to get find the wife itself, get that part out of the way,
Okay.
and perhaps move forward as a gentleman and look to make whatever small contribution in whatever sphere of life that I can.
Wow. You talked about sports administration.
Yeah.
There were interviews for CEO, Uganda Cricket Association, which you
Yes.
partook.
Yeah.
I'm told they announced the wrong winner.
No. If that is your way of saying that I did not get the job, you could have said it better.
So I'm told from the corridors of power and those who were at the board that you actually were the best. Is that a view you share?
You see, unfortunately, as a person, I never ever did get back the results. But for me, I feel like that part may not be important. It's the less important, it's the lower stream part of what happened generally. Is that I think the powers that be came up and chose or decided to pick up on the person they wanted. I mean, that's what recruitment is about. Recruitment is about people applying. First of all, the vacancy going out, people applying for it, and those that are mandated to do the recruitment actually getting that done. So regardless of who did it and how it was done, I think that part is really not important. Is that the core thing is that a process happened and a person was not just elected but appointed in that role, a role that I thought was always going to be a very difficult role in terms of what was going to be expected. But again, for me, I think any way of serving the sport, I think it's never easy. It's never going to be easy. So unfortunately, I did not get the role. And someone else took it, and you and I both know how that went, but here we are.
But you are serving some other sport somewhere.
Yeah.
In what capacity? I know a sport you're serving that's not cricket.
Yes. As I told you earlier, I played a little bit of some badminton at underage badminton. So I serve on the EXCOM of Uganda Badminton Association, and I'm very lucky again to serve and sit on a board where I can as well contribute. Again, not just contribute, but I like to learn, especially things that I do not have knowledge about. I have no issues with unlearning and relearning. So for me to get into a sport that perhaps I may not have had the finer details in, but to sit at that table to try and help in the decision-making process, for me has been a tremendous pleasure, and I hope I can continue to try and add value to badminton.
Thank you. I was having a chat with a colleague of mine, senior colleague in journalism, and he actually told me that Davis Karashani will be a UOC president one time.
From his mouth to God's ears. I would be honored to do something like that. I think sport in this country, in my opinion, is way below its potential. But it's also, we live in times whereby it's good to see that sport is starting to get taken seriously. More recently, there's the act itself, the National Sports Act, that actually got not only gazetted, but it's now actually it's actually lawful together with the regulations. So it's good to see that the steps are being taken in the right direction. It's good to see that sport is being taken beyond the BMs. It's being taken as a serious business. The commercial aspects are starting to come into play. Aspects to do with intellectual property, image rights. So it's good to see that the evolution of the commercialization of sport has actually reached Uganda, and people are starting to take it serious. So for me, from that person's mouth to God's ears, and I hope I can serve in that capacity, and not just serve. I always feel that serving in these roles or getting these roles is the easier part of the job. It's what you do when you're in those roles that really counts for something.
Interesting. Locally here, who inspired you into the game? Of course, there's also that story internationally about Daniel Vittori.
Yeah.
What drives you towards their direction, and how do they inspire your game?
You don't seem to have been a very bad student in terms of doing your homework. You seem to have a couple of bases covered. But to answer your question, Andrew, is that for me locally, I drew a lot of inspiration again from a person that I literally thank for my whole career. Samuel Lusimi was my first ever coach. Became my under-19 coach, the national team coach. He's our club patron. So for me, having simply handpicked me as the 12, 13-year-old from entire school to become the person that eventually did for me is something that I cannot thank him for. I think Kenneth Kamyuka, in his capacity, for me, again, as I stated, that he's the best player I've ever taken the field with. I learned a lot from him as a person. Guys like Richard Mwami, again, as I told you, even if that we had our differences, we had the mutual respect to understand the value addition that each of us could actually bring to the table. So for me, Richard Mwami, for argument's sake, I think Badua Sasira, he was coach of Ntare. He was my first under 15 coach. He eventually became the chairperson of UCA. Kazinduchi Francis. These are old administrators that believed in some of us when we were really, really very, as I said, very small. And so for them to have seen something in us that many of us did not see, I think is something that as a person I do not take for granted. I like to thank Jokam, as I did mention as well earlier, his contribution, the entire fraternity. These are guys that literally picked me up when I was very, very small. At that time I was even playing a bit of football, but for them to have tasked me to actually play the game of cricket and helped me get to where I eventually did. They have always been in the stands supporting the Mwiri fraternity. I do not take it for granted. I went to Mwiri after O-level and I was very welcomed there, so I never ever felt like an alien or an outsider at Tabosoga College Mwiri. So for me, the contribution of the people that have put a stone or a brick to this particular journey for me is massive. There are very many people. Yeah.
A young Davis Karashani.
Yeah.
What would you tell him today?
What would I tell him? Interesting. First of all, I'd ask. I would continue to tell him to believe in what he wants. Continue to be as assertive, or be as assertive in terms of his opinion. Not be too afraid about what the rest of the world might think. It's important to stay within your own means, to understand what you believe in, but also have the ability to want to learn from others. Be a bit of the mattress. So that you're the sponge to learn from whatever is around you. I would also look to tell him to not to hold himself back in terms of reaching for greatness. I felt that perhaps the older version of the Karashani Davis might have gotten to a point and felt maybe simply being at national team level was enough. Maybe we could have reached for getting into the men's senior World Cup when we played. So I feel that those are a couple of the things that I'll probably tell him. Just tell him to believe in himself. Stay strong-willed, not to be put down by certain things, the adversities of life. Stand tall to be counted. But more importantly, I think for me, I would encourage him to do things that when the lights or the curtains are closed, he can actually lie in his bed and be grateful for his contribution to the sport.
Thank you, Davis.
Yeah.
What would you do different if you were in a position of power in Uganda's sport today?
Interesting question. Wow. What would I do differently? I think for me is one. I think because I'm a product of a system that I saw in place work. I would want to provide anything similar or an even better system for the next generation of cricketers. Simply put, I would want to see a lot more school-going children play cricket. I would want to see a lot more mini cricket events at perhaps Lugogo itself. I would want to have a lot more capacity building. When I grew up, we didn't have too many coaches. I don't have a lot of the youngsters learn those aspects of coaching. I would also want to ensure that the players that are playing today have a bit of certain amount of finances in their pockets, so that the game is not only built on passion, but there's a bit of some financial support or professionalism that comes with the sport. So for me, generally speaking, if I were in a position of power right now, I would holistically try and ensure that I put things in place that are not one-dimensional. It's not just the national team, but look to take care of both the men, the women, and ensure that, again, at the end of the day, you need to be able to pat yourself on the back and say that you made a massive contribution without being selfish.
Thank you. You're so easy to talk to because you do all the other job by just a snap of one question. Now, this is the game of life.
Yeah.
And I love asking our guests to them, what's the game of life?
I think the game of life, really, to sum it up for me, is to understand that you're not here forever, first and foremost. But also to understand that with life, there will be a couple of challenges. There will be times for you to actually have a good time. So to also know how you're going to navigate them. As I stated earlier, I don't think there's the perfect blueprint of how you navigate a couple of the adversities that you face. But the fact that you know that they will come, those potholes will actually come around the way, you are a little bit better prepared for it. So for me, the game of life simply is, I like to believe that when you stay humble, the humility that you come with allows a lot of other people to come and be around you to support you. So your humility becomes a welcoming aspect for you as a person, and people can come in to support you. And I felt that in my years in this life, I felt that a lot of our lives are heavily hinged on the people around us. So if you do not have the right people around you to support you as and when the need arises, I find that you can very quickly fall into depression. You fall into aspects of feeling like you are alone in this thing called life. So it's key that you keep one family, friends that you can rely on, but also importantly, do things that will make you happy. Things that at the end of the day, you will sit back and be grateful that you did. You only get one shot at this thing called life.
Davis, we have a little tradition on the show.
Not dancing. Not wearing Man U jerseys. I'm trying to cancel out whatever.
Our tradition is quite simple.
All right.
So it's called pass the torch. So you're going to pass the torch to the next guest who you don't know. They don't know you.
All right.
But when they come in here, we'll read to them the kind of advice you gave them. So this is how it goes. You leave the next guest a piece of wisdom or a little lesson in life or advice that you'd give them, and you don't know them. So, Davis, what piece of advice or one lesson or wisdom would you give to our next guest on the Game of Life podcast?
Well, that's a difficult one, especially because I do not know the next guest. But really just building on to what I just said earlier, for me, because we only live once, we don't have a very long time here on earth. It's important to do things that will make you happy, things at the end of the day that you will sit back and look back and be glad and be happy that you contributed to. So for me, simply put, just be known by your good works. Do not do a lot of things that you will be ashamed of, or things that you'll want to dip your head into. Go the ostrich style. So do things that speak to your values, things that you can be very, very comfortable and put your hand up for.
Wow. It's been a great pleasure. You are such good energy that you help the interview move. We are glad that you honored our invite for the Game of Life. This is a podcast that it's, should I say, the only of its own in the country. And this is where a safe platform for athletes, other leaders elsewhere, artists, and everyday people share their stories from which others learn. And for honoring our invite, we thank you so much.
Follow us, like us on all social media handles, but also press that subscription button on YouTube.
Thank you, Davis.
You're welcome. Pleasure's been mine. And thanks a lot for inviting me. And I was glad that I could actually honor the invitation.
Thank you.